Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm Chinese, and sorry, I can't remember.
That's okay. Yeah. Hi, my name is Frederick, or Fred, and I have been with EF for more than 10 years now.
I'm a content writer now at EF, at the headquarters here in Shanghai.
Hello, my name is Mike, and I have been with EF for 7 years and a few months.
Okay, my name is Sally Noble. I'm 32 from the UK.
My name is Nathaniel, go by Nat.
Okay, so my name's Cal Vola.
Yeah, so I started out as a teacher with EF. Later on, I became a senior teacher. I was a director of studies for a few years, and then I grew into a new role at the time called production manager. And currently, I'm in charge of recruiting for China franchise, actually.
I am currently the academic operations manager working at Shanghai.
And I am now academic operations manager here at headquarters in Shanghai.
I'm the academic operations manager for China franchise.
I'm currently the academic operations manager for Andy's region in China franchise.
I'm the senior recruiter working for Kids and Teens franchise. I've been in China for just over 5 years. I started working for EF in November 2012.
Ooh. Well, can I be very honest? I have no idea.
Okay, well, I came to Hefei originally, and well, why did I choose that city? That city kind of chose me.
Honestly, I don't really know. It seemed like the best place to teach ESL. I was kind of a fresh graduate and I just decided I would get a TEFL certificate and do a year out and teach ESL. China seemed like the best place for the most job opportunities, and it seemed like less hassle to get here than other countries did, so that's why I chose China pretty much.
Okay, well, first for China. After college, I actually went into, I guess, the GIS industry, if you kind of call it. So working with digital maps, kind of random things. Wasn't really looking at the education industry, but I had always been interested in international relations, politics, things like that, and language, and so China just seemed like a really interesting place to come and to get to know.
Chose China because it sounded like the wildest country to visit. If I was going to do this, I wanted to choose somewhere completely away from my normal reality of Halifax in the UK.
It had that great mixture of traditional China and the modern China, and kind of blended it into one. And I think a lot of people find that when they get here, like they can experience the traditional side where there's a lot of cultural differences. You know, you can see the temples, you can go experience Chinese nature however you want. And also they can experience the buzzing metropolis side of China, which is emerging as well. So that's been my experience and a positive experience.
I had been in the TEFL industry for 10 years already when I got the opportunity to interview for the company. And when I did, I wanted to make a move towards a company that was as reputable as the companies that I had worked for before. So an EF matched that profile. And China at that point was something different, exciting. That's why I chose China.
So actually, this is it's quite a funny story because I had a very strong connection with Asia when I was a child. I had a lot of interest in traveling to Asia, and I also had a very keen interest also in learning languages. So I thought while I was in college, I got the chance to go to study in China. I studied Chinese, and That was actually my first contact with China at the time. And I knew EF, and I knew it was quite a reputable company, so I decided to come back and work for EF.
I didn't necessarily choose EF. Basically, I applied on TEFL.com after I had my TEFL certificate for a few different jobs. I applied for a few kind of independent kindergarten jobs, and they get back to me. But there was something about them I just didn't quite trust. They wanted me to come on a tourist visa and then do a Hong Kong run, stuff like that, and I didn't really trust it. EF was the only company that got back to me that seemed legit and were giving me a proper visa, so it kind of seemed like a no-brainer to go with EF.
I chose EF because when I did my CELTA course, it was a recommended school that the tutors told us about. So naturally, when I found them online, it seemed like a good fit because I already knew about them.
I actually came here for a year before EF. Worked in Changsha for a public school, and kind of an interesting experience, but not a particularly rewarding career. So I went back home for a couple months and started looking around for jobs again, and EF was just the most popular choice on the internet. Very professional, felt like a very safe place to come and work and everything. So they take care of the visa process, can make sure that you're safe and you're working in a really large company where there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of other really good people to work with. So yeah, it just seemed like a good solid choice.
By you. I was recruited by, I went on TEFL.com, and then I had an interview with a man called Fred in Hefei, EF Hefei, and it was a Skype interview, and then there was a process that went pretty quickly after that to come here to China. It was an interview, basic interview about myself and why I wanted to become a teacher, and then came here.
Ooh, that was actually a referral, right? A friend of mine came to China a year before me, right? And when she came, I didn't understand why she came to China. But then she had such a great time that a few months later, I was looking for a new job opportunity, and then she said, "Why don't you apply to work here?" And I said, maybe. And then actually she got my CV, I don't know how, and she applied for the job without me knowing. When I suddenly received this email from the DOS saying, "Hi, we would like to interview you on this day." And I was like, what? I never applied for this job. But then I did the interview, and then it happened.
Well, I wouldn't say I was recruited exactly. Like I said, I just went on EF's website and started to just get more information. Eventually applied. I do remember my recruiter, Nayeli Vivanco, and she works at Holt, I think now, last I heard. But it was really simple. I think they really needed teachers at the time, kind of always do. And so we just went right into an interview, which I passed, and then we started to do all of the documents and everything, and I was back before I knew it.
I remember back 9 years ago, there was a very, very famous website for recruitment, still now probably. It's called Zhaopin.com in China. So the school management of my city found my CV on that website, and then they called me and ran an interview with me, and then I was recruited as a teacher for that school.
I Google searched TEFL jobs and TEFL.com came up, and it was as easy as that. I put my resume up online, and the first school to contact me was EF Zhangjiagang.
So I actually applied directly to the city I was studying in while I was an exchange student. So I sent in my resume to the head office, and I got a call to set up an interview, and I was working about 6 months later in the country.
Well, a few different reasons, but one of the main ones is it's never boring, right? It's always exciting. When you think that you got it, that's when you realize that you've just learned something new and there's something else to learn. And then you go the extra mile, and then you see that there's something else to learn. It's never boring. So I think one of the main reasons why I've been with EF for so long is because I've never stopped learning something new.
So originally I only came for, I originally only came for like 6 months. I decided like I'll work for 6 months every year. But then I decided I'll do a year. I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed being in China, I enjoyed being in EF. I felt like they'd worked with me and developed me quite well. So then I stayed for another year. And then after that it was kind of more about the opportunities that were given to me. So I kind of developed into a few different roles, which was a big sort of part of what kept me in China and also working with EF.
I think the first thing and the most important thing for me is the culture. And I enjoy the culture at EF, especially working with people from many, many different countries and many, many different cultural backgrounds. And that's really enchanting and a lot of times very, very charming ideas. And I can learn from everyone. And that's one of the most important reasons. And the second important reason is that EF provides a lot of opportunities for us to not only be a teacher, not only be an academic manager, but also like last year I participated in the Paralympic Games in Brazil. And the first, this was an opportunity provided by EF. I knew this from an email that EF Central Office sent out, and then I applied on the official website, and I got accepted.
It is a company that takes care of you very well. I wanted to stay in China, and EF provides a lot of opportunities. They provide you with housing, a nice setup, and lots of job opportunities as well. I mean, I've had 4 promotions since I've come here in about 6 years, and so that was a very big factor in why I've stayed with EF, obviously. You can progress a lot, and then if I ever did decide to go back to the UK or to the USA, that's a big advantage, is that I've climbed a career ladder now, so that's a big reason.
And I've stayed because it's been worthwhile. I've always felt like I was developing, either through working with just strong leaders and co-workers and everything, or just through my own initiative. Either way, I thought there were opportunities for me to take chances and work on things, but also projects and things that I could collaborate on. And also just feeling like I was getting better at what I was doing. At first teaching, but eventually moving into academic management. So I always felt like I was growing.
EF is a very welcome company. The training and development that I've received so far in any job that I've done far surpasses what I thought I was going to get. People have been very open. I feel really safe with this company. I've had an issue where I had to go to the hospital before, and EF looked after me. Everything just seemed quite safe and secure with this company. I didn't see any need to move anywhere else.
I was a teacher for EF for a good few years and a director of studies. I was a teacher for about 5.5 years and a director of studies for 2 years.
At the beginning, I was a teacher, and after a year, I was promoted as the senior teacher for the school, and then I was assistant DOS for about 1.5 years, and then DOS for about 5 years, and senior DOS for about 1.5 years.
Yeah, so this is, I would say, my development has been probably the biggest reason why I'm also staying with the company and having stayed with the company for such a long time. I've been given lots of opportunities to grow and develop with the company. I started, like I mentioned, as a teacher, and quite quickly, I think I excelled in teaching, and I just got some experience also managing. And managing and being a DOS, also director of studies, led to many new challenges and projects and roles. And finally I ended up here in Shanghai in headquarters.
To start with, I'm like really terrible teacher. I had loads of parents complaining about my class and stuff within the first few months, and I really liked the fact that nobody kind of shouted at me, nobody got angry, just people worked with me to get me better. And then after that, I kind of developed as a teacher first, and then into a senior teacher position to sort of act as a mentor and help new teachers coming in. And then after I was a senior teacher, I then developed into a director of studies position, so kind of managing the full academic team and working with sales and service and stuff, which was kind of more the direction I wanted to go in. And then after having done that for about a year and a half, I kind of sort of said that I wanted to move more in a recruitment and HR direction, and started looking for opportunities and managed to then transfer to the head office in Shanghai to work in recruitment.
And I came as a teacher, right? And before that, I had already done a lot of things in the TEFL industry, like teacher trainer. I had DOSed before, but I came as a teacher because I wanted to be a teacher, right? And then a couple of years into the job, there were some changes in my school, and that's when I became a senior teacher. But you know, once you start, you kind of don't stop, right? You start learning all these new things, and I could use a lot of skills that I had learned from previous jobs into that job at the time. And then when you realize you're looking at the next step, which for me was becoming a DOS in that center. And I was DOS there for a couple of years, and then there was the opportunity to be a kind of a general DOS for the city.
So I came to China with no experience. I'd done a startup course for 4 weeks, but I came with nothing. And so I came as a teacher. In my first year, I learned how to become a teacher, and I also took distance courses with EF. I took a grammar course with them so I could brush up my skills. In my second and third years, I became a senior teacher and a director of studies in Zhangjiagang, with full support from both Zhangjiagang management team and with the EF central team in Shanghai. And now, 3 months ago, I became the academic operations manager.
Well, when it comes to my career with EF and in education, it's definitely been just seeing my own ability to work with people grow, and particularly my ability to coach not only teachers but also academic managers, so to help them learn how to teach others how to improve themselves. And so as I kind of move up into higher positions with more responsibility, it's just growing that even further and having just seeing a bigger picture of how as a company we really can set up a system where everyone's always improving.
I think my proudest achievement was making DOS, actually, especially because I feel like I got off to quite a rocky start as a teacher because I wasn't great at experience. So going from that to director of studies and then being in charge of developing and mentoring my own team, I feel it was like a huge accomplishment, actually.
As a from academic side, I was the first director of studies for whole China, the first local director of studies for the whole China, and now I'm the first local academic operations managers for the whole China. I think that makes me feel proud on the one hand, but on the other hand, last year when I was in the Paralympic Games, China Daily sent a journalist to interview me and reported my experience from the Paralympic Games, and that was also a very, very precious moment for my life, not only for my career.
I would say it's a tough question. Personally, I would say raising 2 children in China would be my proudest achievement on a personal level. On a professional level, I would say developing and also recruiting so many new teachers over the years, hundreds of teachers, literally hundreds of teachers over the years, but also being able to develop many of these teachers into managers, and they're still working with the company.
I have two. One is the first person I ever recruited when I was Director of Studies. He was also a new teacher, and I recruited him as a new teacher. He came, and then when he came to China, he was a teacher for me for a year. Then he became a senior teacher, and now he's a Director of Studies. Actually, he's a Director of Studies at Zhangjiang. So for me, that was a really proud moment to see my first ever person I recruited be able to develop that way and be able to develop him to that level. And he's currently just found out he's got a distinction in his diploma course, which is a very high level course. So again, really happy that I found him, worked to China, and he's developed all of that way. My other proudest achievement was winning an Internal Stardust Award 2015, which meant I really had accomplished my goals of what I wanted to do as a Director of Studies.
I'm not sure exactly, because there are many levels of achievement, I would say, right? For me personally, was understanding the impact that I could have on the team, that my team could achieve a very good result based on how I was supporting them. And the biggest achievement was in 2016 at the national conference, when my schools won awards because of the good work that they put in, and I know that I had an impact, that I helped them achieve those results. So I would consider that as one of my biggest achievements. Oh, definitely. Well, one of my first groups was this teens group, Trailblazers, right? And there was this girl called Ruby, and she was lovely. She was the first student that stood up. When I walked into the classroom, she stood up and she walked up to me and she said, "Hi teacher, my name is Ruby, nice to meet you." And she stood out because it was the first student that ever did that to me in China. I was like, wow, beautiful. She was an excellent student. But after a few months, she left because, they have all these extra classes in China, so she had to go for her extra classes and she had to give up studying English. But a couple of years later, we were recruiting local teachers. I was already a senior teacher, and we were recruiting teachers, local teachers, and then she applied for the job. And she could speak perfect English. And then I was talking to her and I was like, well, I remember teaching you, and she was talking about how she remembered the classes. And the reason why she stood out amongst a lot of students that I had is because she said that the reason why she learned to like English is because she learned to have fun with it. Like all the lessons, we were genuinely having fun, studying, doing the work, but having fun. And that's how she got to love it, and that's how she became a teacher.
Yes, I had many students. I was thinking about this when I saw the question. I was thinking about which one should I talk about. I want to talk about a girl. Her name is Tina. She started as my Small Stars Blue student when she was about 3 years old. And by the time when I left the Wuxi school, she was 11 years old. And she has been my student that whole period of time. So I was part of her growing and her development this whole time. So when she came to EF, she cried for about 4 months, and she wouldn't say a word, and she just wanted to run out of the classroom all the time. And by the time I left Wuxi, she could talk to me in English. A very short conversation, but free conversation. I was very proud. It wasn't like she was speaking English fluently, but she was speaking English willingly.
I would say I've got two quite big success stories. One was a student and one was actually a teacher. The student-wise, I had a student called William. Towards like the middle of sort of when I just became a senior teacher, people PAs, the service team, sort of decided like if there was any trouble students, they would just move them into my class because I guess they felt I could deal with them. And I had this one student come in called William, and he was like a total nightmare. Just didn't want to sit down, didn't want to speak English. Was way below his level, and I worked with him for a couple of years. Got him really comfortable being in the class. I moved school to be a manager in a different school, and he actually moved to the other side of the city. Well, like he travelled to the other side of the city so he could still be in my class. And by the time I left, his English wasn't perfect by any stretch. He wasn't even like the best in his class, but he was much more comfortable and confident being there and in communicating. I had one local teacher who came in, and she was not a great teacher. She had lots of experience in doing other things like HR related, but hadn't taught before, and a lot of people were kind of counting her out, and we worked loads and loads and loads and developed her up, and she became a really strong and competent teacher over the time that I worked with her.
I was thinking students perhaps, and I've taught hundreds of students over the years, and one student that stands out, her name was Amy. First time I taught her, she was about 3.5 years old. And I went into the classroom. It was a really small class, and she hid behind the door. She was quite scared. This was the first time actually she had met a foreigner, and she didn't really want to speak. But I taught Amy for about 7 years, and when I left the school at the time, we could converse fluently in English. So I was quite happy with her development also as an English learner.
Sure, I think a lot of teachers will probably say the same thing, that you tend to remember your toughest students and your strongest students. But the difference between the two is you can really see the difference you made more so, I think, with the tough students. And so I do remember one in particular. It's from my first High Flyer Accelerator class, which is the equivalent to High Flyer C basically now. And so he was very, very difficult, very stubborn, and would kind of just rebel any way he could because that was his way of kind of lashing out. And so I think you'll find that a lot, that you'll get some students that really haven't gotten a lot of discipline either at home or in school or anything like that. And so sometimes it falls to us to do that. And you're probably going to find with a lot of those students that you're not going to feel like you're making a difference, and you're going to feel like that for a long time. But then there's going to be some kind of an incident or occurrence where all of a sudden it completely changes and they turn around. And I do think every student has some kind of a point like that. If someone can provide that, it's being strong, like being a wall, but also showing compassion at the same time. It's a really tough balance to strike. But if you can do that and stay strong, then you're going to eventually have some kind of a moment where things really turn around. And that's where you'll start to see growth, not only academically or with language, but as a person in that student.
I had a student from small stage. She was really very shy. Actually, she cried for a lot of the lessons that I first had her for. But throughout the years of me being her teacher, she developed a little bit more confidence, and she took part in one of the national speaking competitions for China, CCTV competition. And the last year that I was in Zhangjiagang, she made it through to the regional finals in Nanjing. So we could really see how her progress had gone from a really shy new student to somebody who could speak in front of a big audience on a national stage.
Ooh, that is a tough one, because there have been a lot. There are other students, though, that I've taken from a very foundational level where they've come to EF not knowing anything, and then seeing the progress. That's a very fulfilling kind of experience when you see that as well. I would also say, though, that when I was a director of studies, there were success stories that were teachers that I helped to develop, and that is also a great feeling when you help someone to become a senior teacher, and then perhaps a director of studies as well. And so if you ever do get that far, if you're watching this and you ever do want to get into management, that is a great feeling as well.
Yeah, so I worked in a city called Urumqi, which is on the far west side of China, so maybe franchisee's most remote city, certainly the furthest away from our head office. It's really close to like Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Central Asia. I love the city. It's not a city for everybody. You have to be quite adventurous to go there, but it's really great. Summer is super hot. I remember 2 summers back to back, it was pretty much 45 degrees Celsius for the full summer, and it was like insanely hot. And then winter it goes to like -20, -30 sometimes, but it's really good because there's loads of mountains nearby, so you can go skiing and snowboarding and stuff like that. And it gave me like a real chance to see real Chinese culture, and then also some other sort of minority cultures in China that you don't really get to see in a lot of other places.
Wuxi is a very peaceful, very peaceful town. It's not as big as Shanghai. It's busy sometimes, but most of the times it's quiet. It has the lake, so people can run around the lake. It has everything else available. Most of the things, not that many varieties as Shanghai, but basic stuff. Everything's there. That's what I always tell people. We've got an opera house, we've got stadiums, we've got numerous of shopping malls and cinemas, so people can enjoy life after work. It's big and it's small. Big in the sense you can get everything you need. It's easy to transfer everywhere because there's the subway as well, but it's small. Culturally, it's small and it's very unique. Wuxi is the birthplace of the Wu culture in China. So if you're into culture, go to Wuxi and you can enjoy the local opera, you can enjoy the local stand-up comedian, and you can enjoy the local canal trip.
Well, I came to Hefei originally. When I went there originally, it had that great mixture of the traditional China and the modern China, and kind of blended it into one. And I think a lot of people find that when they get here, like they can experience the traditional side where there's a lot of cultural differences. You know, you can see the temples, you can go experience Chinese nature however you want. And also they can experience the buzzing metropolis side of China, which is emerging as well. So that's been my experience and a positive experience.
Oh my god, well, I've worked in several cities. I'm going to talk about Ningbo, right? Ningbo was the city that I worked in before I moved to Shanghai. And the reason why I decided to move to Ningbo at that point was because it wasn't big like Shanghai, but I could still have that Chinese cultural feeling in a way, right? I wanted still to live in a place that was not extremely international, extremely developed, but it was comfortable, but still had that Chinese touch, if it makes sense. And that was a city that could offer me that at that point. That's why I decided to go there. And also because the schools were big, they were growing, they were expanding, and I wanted to be part of that at that moment. That's why I decided to go there.
Zhengzhou is very clean. Actually, it's very famous in China. It's in the top 5 of the cleanest cities in China. So it's got lovely tree-lined streets, and it's very open. There's lots of parks and green areas to go into. When I visited other places in China, they were quite busy and a little more chaotic for me. Zhengzhou is 1.2 million people. So it's very safe, small and compact. And it was quite an immersive cultural experience. That's what I was after at the time. So Zhangjiagang for me appealed to me in terms of what I wanted China to be for me, but also in terms of the school itself, for my development, and just from what I needed at the time, Zhangjiagang was perfect.
stay hungry. That's very important. So basically, from day one, know what you want. And I think for many of us, we started out as potentially as new teachers. I think seek out opportunities to learn. It's very, very important. But stay hungry also in that sense that you are looking for development, and EF is a place to give you lots of opportunities to grow and develop.
Well, first, learn how to teach. Put in the work, listen to your DOS, but don't just depend on people coming to you to help you. Hopefully you'll have a lot of people that will do that, but just with any company, with life, the more you take on yourself, the more you look for the answers and try to figure out how you can improve, the faster you will.
Learn. As a teacher, I know we need to teach, and that's our job. But I think to be a good teacher, you have to learn. Learn from everyone and learn from everything. Learn from, if you're an international teacher, learn from the new environment you are living in. Learn from China, learn from your school, learn from your Chinese stuff, and learn from everything. And even learn from your students.
I would tell a new teacher to embrace the concept of learning what it is to be a teacher first, learning everything that they can from others in order to gain that experience and that knowledge, and then to use that to then create their own style. I would tell them to learn as much as they can from others first and continue along that journey, and then they will actually be able to create their own style with that background experience. Yeah.
I would say a piece of advice is it's never as hard and difficult as it seems, right? When I think the anticipation is worse than anything else. We are facing challenges every day. We face problems every day. But if you just look at the problem and if you just think about the problem, it looks so complicated and so difficult. But when you actually work on it, it's easier than you think, right? So my piece of advice would be just go with it, right? Just do your best and go with it. It's never as bad as it seems. Just go with it.
The best advice I can give is to not worry so much. Do not stress out about being perfect straight away. When you come to China, it's a brand new country, brand new language, brand new culture, and then you suddenly got to work on top of that. And sometimes it can be very, very overwhelming, and the desire to try and make everything perfect straight away naturally one would incline to be like that. That's not going to happen, and I think sometimes just taking a step back from a situation, if you've had a bad lesson, then what can you take from it, and then be better about next time. Don't beat yourself up about it, because nobody else is going to, especially if it's little kids. They probably won't have noticed it as much as what you're telling yourself about. So don't worry, take steps day by day and just learn.
In terms of the job, I would say if you start and you're not good at it, don't worry too much about it, especially if you don't have teaching experience. You can sit and learn TEFL or do a CELTA. That only gives you a kind of idea of what you're doing, but once you're actually here and dealing with 3-year-old Chinese students, it's very, very different. But EF does give you that support to build you up. In terms of being in China, I would just say be open to everything that happens. When you come, you might feel overwhelmed. Don't sit in your apartment and do nothing. I've seen teachers do that before and you get nothing out of the experience. Just fight through that discomfort barrier and go and actually do stuff, socialise.
My biggest challenge is probably because from the minute you step off the plane in China, I don't think anything can really prepare you for the fact that everything's in Chinese. You think you're mentally prepared for that, but it will hit you at some point in the first few weeks, and you've got to try and get over that. Everywhere you go, everything is in Chinese. Even the language is different. It's not in the same alphabet that we're used to. So it can be really challenging to, if you're having a bad day, to just get through the day and everything's in a different language and trying to compete with people. That one, sometimes we still have our China days, but that's okay. You just learn to get through it.
I think starting out as a foreigner, not knowing the language, that was a big challenge. I moved to a city where there were not a lot of foreigners around, and you wouldn't hear English all the time. So that was a challenge, but it was really immersion also. I think also food in general. I lived in a place where there's a lot of quite spicy food, and I wasn't used to that at first, but now I love it. So the food culture, I guess, was a challenge in the beginning.
I think the biggest challenge, the language barrier is a challenge that I think most people speak about. That was obviously a challenge. Another thing that was a challenge for me was the food. It was like super spicy compared to like British food, which is like super bland. So that took a lot of getting used to, and you get sick, everybody gets sick, so that's a challenge as well.
I think it was when I first came to China, at the forefront of my mind was being in the new culture. It wasn't the teaching aspect, which you might think is strange. But when I was on the plane coming to China, I was thinking about the new life in China that I would have culturally, but I wasn't really paying too much attention onto the teaching. But when you get here, that's a big part of your life, is the teaching aspect, and it's a great part of your life. And so the challenge was kind of the fact that I needed to grow in this new skill, teaching, and also adapt to a new culture at the same time. And it's about balancing those two things. And I think that was a big challenge for me as well, time management and kind of managing all of these new things that I was bombarded with. How did I overcome it? I think get to know people and get to know the circle of people around you, listen to what they have to say, and it takes time. Don't try and rush it. Give it a few months before you start kind of settling in, and then eventually you'll get there. That's how I got there.
I think the biggest challenge was, it's gonna sound very funny, but realizing that I was not home. Right? It's gonna sound very silly, but when you move to another country, you are aware that you are moving to a different culture, right? But we're not that smart, because when we get there, we take a lot of things for granted. And I think that was my biggest problem. For example, I'm from Brazil. We drink coffee all the time. And I got in China 7 years ago. There was no coffee. And I remember getting through the phases of, oh yeah, there's no coffee. And a week later, oh my God, how can they not have coffee? 2 weeks later, how can they live without the coffee? But then 2 months later, you go like, yeah, I can do without coffee. You know, I think going through this was the biggest challenge. But you get through, right? You learn other ways of doing things or other things that you can do instead. And when you realize you already have a routine, that makes it easier.
Well, I suppose one big challenge would be true for going anywhere. It's when you come over here by yourself, you're basically starting over. And you're starting over in a new environment where you don't speak the language, well, for most people at least. So it's learning how to survive and then be successful at the same time. But I mean, that's also really exciting too. You get to meet new friends, you get to overcome those challenges. The biggest tip I would have is be patient. You can make things happen, but it's not going to be on your timeline probably. You just got to keep trying to find solutions and get help from people until you can figure it out.
What I like most about China, I think the opportunities that it's given me, not just in my job, but also I've got to go to countries and travel to places like the Philippines and Thailand and stuff like that. for really not a lot of money at places that I never really thought I'd be able to go and see. So it's giving me those kind of opportunities as well, and I really enjoy that about being here.
Obviously the job, I think just being able to teach and interact with so many students over the years, that's been my biggest motivation also, I think, also staying with China and the company. But also I have a keen interest in language learning and just learning more about Chinese culture and the language itself. That's what keeps me going also.
I like that China gives. It's a really tough question. There are so many different things. One aspect of it is that I can actually see Western culture from a different perspective. Being in China gives me a broader perspective. So I've actually learned a lot about Western culture from being on the outside than I ever did when I was on the inside. So that's quite interesting. But I also like that I can try. I'm always learning something new in China. Actually, like I've been here now almost 6 years, and for sure every month I've been in China, I've learned something fresh about culture in China that I didn't know before. So every month, that's what almost 50 months I've been in China, and what's that? My maths is bad. I'm an English person, not a math. I've been in China a long time, but every month I've learned something brand new.
What I like about China, well, it's never boring, is it? It's never boring. When you think you have figured it out, then you haven't. I don't know, I think it's a place that really teaches you about yourself, right? It challenges you in ways that you never think about. But once you've gone through all the experience of learning about yourself and adapting to the culture, the constant adaptation that we go through, because you never learn everything, no matter how long you stay here, but it really makes you a stronger person, and it makes you, it allows you to deal with challenges in a completely different way.
Well, I enjoy China because it's fast-paced. I didn't think I would really like crowded cities and things like that so much, but I think I do now. Like I'm from a very small town, but I think I like the anonymity and the opportunities that are out there. I actually feel like I'm free to kind of do whatever I want in a lot of ways that I wouldn't feel like back in the United States.
I think maybe being in a completely different environment to the UK. Sometimes as foreigners we're shielded from all the craziness that's going on in the world sometimes. So if we choose not to look at the media, Western media, then we don't get the information we say. In the UK, you're just bombarded with everything every day, whether it's positive or negative. In China, you can kind of switch that off. You can just be in China and explore your hobbies and your development. You don't need to worry about what's going on in the world, because actually there's an off switch in China. Because you can't hear it all around you, it's in Chinese, so it's easy.
Okay, thank you. That's
You're
it.
welcome.
That's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome job. Really great.
Right.
Good. Awesome. Thank you so much. That's
I
awesome
don't
job.
know if I
Really good.
express
Really
everything.
good. we could just go with your video now.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh, no problem. Oh, do you want to do on this side now? Just kidding.
Excellent. Thanks.
That's it. Thank you.
Questions from the audience?
Yeah.